In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read ancient tomes, the order of the Abercast. We are the brave and bold.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Stigmata Studios presents The Jinn Jihad. The Jinn Jihad kicks your face with myths, mysteries, epic battles, suicide bombers, quirky characters, and divine power armor. In this epic graphic novel, the warrior archangels descend on a city in chaos. It's all-out war. The non-standard assembly battles an ancient terrorist organization and their ultimate weapon, a corrected, magically enhanced, unstoppable monster, the Jinn. This graphic novel is a wild ride. It's one part distant Arab myth, one part Old Testament angelic vengeance, and one part unique heroic tough guys. Available on Amazon. Get more info on the Jinn Jihad and other titles at stigmatastudios.com.
I tried and I failed to get bin Laden, and I did everything I could. Former President Bill Clinton. No, sir, I don't think so. The former president, seems to be able to deny facts with impunity. Bin Laden is alive today because of Mr. Clinton, Mr. Sandy Berger, and Mr. Richard Clarke refused to kill him. That's the bottom line. Dr. Michael Scheuer, head of CIA's Bin Laden group. Let's get to it. Is it gonna work? No.
The Abercast. Occult. History. Conspiracy. Violence.
All right, welcome to the Abercast. So basically, I've done over 3 hours of podcasting this weekend, and I'm going to upload them all right when I'm done with this, so on Sunday night. Because I just felt like I needed to not string this along and just get it out there. So this is going to be 9/11, the events of 9/11 in context, part 3. So the last 2 episodes, we kind of went from the beginning of the ending of the Islamic Caliphate about 334 years ago at the gates of Vienna in 1683. If you want to read a fictionalized account of this, I wrote a comic book about it. It's called Vienna, 1683. All the way up, so from the gates of Vienna to 1683, all the way up to September 2001. And we're attempting to show that 9/11 wasn't just a few guys rolling out of bed, grabbing a box cutter, and changing the world. And like I said, this is my pet peeve with these 9/11 guys, these truther dudes, when they're like, well, we all know that, a wizard knocked the building down as part of a ritual, and the buildings represented Boaz and Yakin, and like the Masons had something to do with it. Or, even worse, I guess, is like the mini nuclear weapons built inside the building in the 70s, or the directed energy weapons that clearly knocked the building down. So when you're like, no, I actually just believe like some crazy Muslims did this. They're like, oh, you really believe that story? Where just these 19 guys can just do this with box cutters? And our answer, as I've laid out extensively in these 3 episodes, is no. We've been talking about the massively big combinations of the right people, combinations of the right places, the combinations of the right frames of mind and circumstances. And we're kind of getting into shedding some light on this wild rash of, quote, bureaucratic incompetence, unquote. This sort of phenomenon that allows people like the blind sheikh a visa and lets them somehow insanely into the country once he gets out of an Egyptian prison for murdering Egyptian Prime Minister Sadat. Or stuff like the CIA knowing Al-Qaeda members connected to a Brooklyn terror cell are enrolled in flying lessons in Florida and not being allowed to tell the FBI about it. Things like knowing where Osama bin Laden is, having snipers on him in their scopes, and not greenlighting or assassinating him beforehand, or knowing where Osama bin Laden is hiding, and then notifying these Muslim countries, so instead of picking him up, they can go ahead and notify him so he can hide or flee. So that's the recap. I kind of decided to annex this show because even though I wanted you guys to have an out. Like, if you didn't want to listen to all the, blame Clinton stuff or whatever, then you just don't have to listen to this episode. You can still get tons of great information from the last 2 episodes, and you don't really have to get into this with me tonight. But that's what this episode's going to be. Is it's going to detail the huge amount of liability that Bill Clinton has on 9/11. So there you go. There's your fucking trigger warning for all you fucking snowflakes. Oh my God. I haven't put this much podcasting out in 1 week in like forever, you guys. So come on now. So that was the recap. So before we get started on all this stuff, we're going to like I mentioned, we're going to kind of back up or rewind to talk about or examine more the late 90s. This is the Clinton era. And we're going to pull apart or look at why 9/11 was actually allowed to happen. But before we get deep into this, and let's get this stuff out of the way. This is normal beginning of the show kind of stuff. So I want to say that I just saw my social media feed that Len Wein had passed away. So I want to say R.I.P. And, this guy, rarely have you found someone that is this integral in comic book history. This guy invented the Swamp Thing. He invented the Nightcrawler and Storm and Wolverine from the X-Men. He was integral with reinvigorating the X-Men after the Silver Age. So want to say rest in peace to Len Wein. And I mean, the amount of inspiration that this guy is responsible for to me and my personal life is amazing. So, oh shit, I forgot to mention, he was the editor of Watchmen. He worked with Dave Gibbons and of course, Alan Moore to do that seminal 80s deconstruction of superheroes. You know, if you've seen the movie, it's pretty awesome. If you should read the fucking book, though, so go ahead and read the book. I have a couple things also that I need to talk about. I mentioned in the last episode about the fire melting steel, and I never circled back around. At least I don't think so. I was a little deep in my cups last night. But so what I was talking about is, you're talking about a massive structure. You're talking about, the tallest structure, like it beat the Empire State Building or whatever, the Chrysler Building, whichever one. I guess it's probably the Empire State Building by a couple feet. Like, this thing's ginormous. And what happens, like, you could just do like this physics experiment, like in your brain, like one of these like one of these mental experiments, like in your brain. Like, so we all know, like,
Vienna,
what?
1683.
Not yet. Fuck, man. I think my soundboard is possessed. I'm really gonna get back on point. Oh, okay. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do like a small kind of just mental science experiment. We all know, I wasn't a great scientist in school, but we all know that. And I'm sure I'm going to be wrong on at least some of this or part of it. So feel free to reach out and tell me that I'm a dipshit and how I'm wrong. But we all know that energy is not destroyed; it's transferred, right? So this is your little homework while we're doing this. If you condense a spring down, so like all the potential energy in the spring it's collapsed, and it's all like just down inside this it's all crunched together to spring. It has all this energy in it potentially. Well, now if you're holding it and you dip the spring in acid and the acid melts the spring, where does that potential energy go? It's not being destroyed, so where does it go? So think about it for a second. I would like to tell you guys to support the show, especially this week, because it takes a long time to put a show together. You guys just think like I mix a drink and I just sit down here and bullshit with you and tell a couple dick jokes or whatever. But the amount of research and stuff it takes some time. And when I work on the show research, I have to put comic books aside. So like right now I'm supposed to be drawing this gigantic picture of a giant melting slug. Well, you guys will hear about this in a few months probably. But so instead of finishing this splash page of a gigantic melting slug, I mean like big, like the size of a building, like it's pretty gnarly. So instead of finishing this splash page, instead I've been doing research and stuff to get this third episode on this 9/11 thing out tonight. So if you guys dig that, there's a couple different ways you could support the show. You can always rate and review on iTunes. That's awesome. I got like one iTunes review from a listener, Josh, who's out there. Thank you very much, sir. Josh and I got concerned because I was reading the invocation of Horus a few episodes ago, and I forgot to like protect myself, in my studio while I was doing it. And Josh is an embalmer. And when he listens to the show, he's listening to generally 4 or 5 cadavers. So we were concerned that maybe if he listened to the show out loud, Horus would come down and become in the body of these cadavers, and we would have a whole fucking thing on our hands. I assured him that was not the case, or it shouldn't have been the case. But however, it would make a good story, and it's in the pipeworks. It's in the story drawer here, and I might do it someday. So rate, review the show, yada yada. You could share the show on your social media and your friends. Apparently, I'm guessing the law of averages and everything aside, if you are a weirdo and you like the stuff that we talk about on the show, you probably know other weirdos that probably would like the stuff that we talk about on the show. So go ahead and share this with your other weirdos. You motherfuckers, I appreciate it. On your social media, you can find me on all the social media. Engage with me. I'd like to talk. I'd like to find out why you guys like the show. I'd like to ask you what kind of episodes do you like? Do you like the Stone of Destiny episodes, or do you like the Tanks of World War II episodes? I don't know. No one talks to me, so I have no idea why you guys are listening. The best way to support the show, however, is to buy some books. And with that being said, Revenge in a Saloon Called Hell, which is the kickoff of this year's giant project, is going to be available like next fucking week. If it's not available already, I just don't know about it. It's going to be fast. But to celebrate, our 50th episode, actually our 50th, 51st, and 52nd episode this week. I'm an overachiever. One of the Stigmata Studios sort of mantras is if something's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. So pour yourself a drink, you fool. Anyhow, to celebrate hitting the 50th episode, and also the rollout of this new project. So, hashtag Rise of the Beast. I'm also dealing with this other thing where I'm like, you will worship him, but I think that's from Doctor Who, so it's like, I don't know, you'll beg him, you'll be a supplicant. I don't know what it's gonna be, but this whole thing is like winding up to like, I'm gonna my next thing I think is I'm gonna do a comic version set in my comic book universe of Revelations. We're gonna have like some Four Horsemen. It's gonna be pretty wicked, bro. So you want to jump in now. And what I'm trying to say is that in order to celebrate all of these things, the 51st and 52nd episode of the Abercast and the rollout of this new project, I'm saying if you sign into the newsletter this week, which is 9/11 through 9/17 of 2017, like, if you're listening to this in the year 3024, and you sign into the newsletter, I'm probably not even going to be alive. My liver will probably have failed by then. So, I don't know. But if you sign into the newsletter this week, I will go ahead and send you a free digital copy of Revenge in a Saloon Called Hell. And I know you guys are like, get to it already. I want to finish this fucking 9/11 thing. So the idea is that this guy who feels like he's been slighted in the past from his dealings with this archangel and this battle that he had with this demon lord, he feels like his life's kind of been ruined by these fucking guys. So he figures out a way to get to hell, and so he can seek his revenge on them. And the whole thing is an open love letter to a Sergio Leone style spaghetti western, specifically Sergio Leone, but I love all spaghetti westerns, even the Django ones. Not the Jamie Foxx Django one, however, that's not a bad western either. It's just not a spaghetti western. It's like a spaghetti southern, or like a Quentin Tarantino southern. I don't know. Spaghetti westerns, thumbs up. This is an open letter to spaghetti westerns, specifically the Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns. I do a lot of new things in it. I took myself to frame school. I'm doing a new theory on how I'm framing. I'm doing a lot of splash pages. I'm doing sound effects, which is something that I've shied away from for years, but sound effects are in full effect. Thank you, Walt Simonson. I am just babbling at this point. So we should get into this. So I want you to mix up a gin jihad or whatever. I'm enjoying whiskey again. So this is kind of like a replay from last night's episode. Literally, I've been recording for like 3 nights in a row, over an hour apiece. Like, give me some props, yo. And I mean, this is a hot button item. You guys might skip this. You might not. I don't know. You might just fucking rage against the shit that I'm telling you. So I'm open to it. Come on, let's fucking fight about it. So mix up a gin jihad and just enjoy it after this long week of recording and listening to shit. Everybody. Yeah, we're going to do this one. Okay. And 1 and a 2 and a 3. So if you're wondering what happens with the spring and the acid, what happens is the temperature of the acid rises significantly. Now, there's a lot of, or insignificantly, I don't know. It depends on like the vat of acid, I guess, or like what kind of acid, or how big the spring is. But the point of the matter is that we're dealing with these giant structures, and that weight sitting there has a lot of power. It's got a lot of energy in it. And when you start knocking floors down or running fucking airplanes into them, who knows what's going on with that? Do I think that running an airplane full of jet fuel into a building is enough to knock it down? Yes. Yeah, I do. So there you go. All you space guys and your satellites with invisible laser beams and all this that you're out there, you might be listening to the wrong fucking podcast right now. Come back when we talk about, I don't know, whatever, wizards and stuff. Come back when we do some wizard talk. Richard, a lot of this stuff comes from Richard Minter's book, Losing Bin Laden, How Bill Clinton's Failure Unleashed Global Terror. It also comes from a guy named Dr. Michael Scheuer. We're going to talk about him later. He's the dude that answered the Bill Clinton thing in the cold open. He was the director, or what I think it's director. He was like the head dude, and he was the head motherfucker in charge of the CIA unit, I think from like 96 to like whenever. So, he's actually like real outspoken, and he's kind of a firebrand. Not a whole lot of people like him, especially Richard Clarke. And my thing is like, well, if Richard Clarke doesn't like you, then I like you, because I don't like Richard Clarke at all. Okay, so let's go. Where are we going? We're going to, before we get going, it's important to note that before Bill Clinton's inauguration, the CIA started collecting a ton of info, ton of data or whatever on Al-Qaeda. So let's get some context here. President Clinton gets sworn into office January of 1993. And the World Trade Centers get bombed in 1993. This is the blind Sheikh Mohammed Sheikh thing where they had that Al Farouk mosque, and they loaded up a rental truck and they put some explosives in it, and they blew up one of the towers, and their plan was for the base of this tower to kind of like have structural integrity problems, and it was going to actually fall into the other tower, like you're chopping down a fucking tree, and you go timber, and it just hits another tree and fucking falls down. Like that was their Acme fucking Wile E. Coyote plan that they were going to do. So the Trade Center gets bombed by this terror cell in Brooklyn that the Blind Sheikh is involved in. And also remember, this is the one where they found the VIN number on the axle, and they called the rental place, and they're like, well, we're never going to see this fucking guy again. And they're like, no, actually, he's coming back. He reported the truck stolen, and he's trying to get his deposit back. So they showed up and arrested this fucking idiot. He moved out of a cave to fucking learn how to go get his deposit back. All right, now remember that at the time, or before the World Trade Center bombing, they had an undercover asset in this cell who was acting as their bomb builder until he was fired from the FBI for not wanting to wear a wire or testify. He didn't want to wear a wire because he would have to testify, and if he testified, he felt like his family that was still in Egypt would be open for retaliation. So it's not outside the realm of reality. This guy doesn't want to testify because he's still got a sister or whatever in Egypt. This guy ran from Egypt after the prime minister got plugged because he was a military guy in the Egyptian army. So he had to get the fuck out of Dodge. So they let their the FBI left their one and only inside guy walk, or they fired him or whatever. This sounds a lot like, quote, bureaucratic incompetence, unquote, to me. Doesn't it? We're going to see a lot of this. We're going to see a lot of it. All right, so Bill doesn't go to the bomb site. He does mention it later in the day, however, in a speech about his economic policy. I'm not faulting him on this. However, like Richard Minter says, he was like, I wonder how he might have dealt with this Al-Qaeda problem. Maybe he would have dealt with it a little bit more seriously if he would have gotten the perspective of seeing the damage. You know, this crater was pretty big that's inside this lower level, you know, and like there were 6 people that died. You know, in this day and age, just think about that. Just think about think about this. United States' first major terror attack from a foreign force or whatever, blows up. I mean, not blows up, damages one of our awesomest buildings in New York City, and the fucking president doesn't even show up. Imagine if that were to happen today. That would be fucking crazy. That wasn't like the first terrorist attack. I mean, we've had terror attacks forever. Like in the 60s, you know, these leftists are running around bombing police stations, and fucking killing fucking people in post offices and stuff. You know, we've had all that, but this is like the first like foreign one. You know, there was like hijackings and bombings and stuff, but that was all in the Middle East. That was all overseas or whatever. Like this is like the big one here. It's the big one here. You know, all the way to 2001. And this guy doesn't show up. Like I said, I'm not faulting him on that because it's like, well, you know, especially the Clintons had optics. Like, they pulled every fucking thing they did. They pulled it, they triangulated it, they figured out the centrist view and whatever. So that their fucking people, their handlers, probably this fucking Sandy Berger clown. You know who this guy is? He's the guy, he went into the National Archives and stole a bunch of, this actually relates. He actually stole a bunch of documents from the National Archives. He fucking stuffed them in his pants and left. He never returned them. They know who he is. They fucking like indicted him, but they were like, oh, it was an accident. He didn't mean to stuff these documents in his fucking pants and leave. He just did it. He accidentally stuffed the documents in his pants. And this has to do with 9/11. Like, he stole Bill Clinton documents about 9/11 out of this place. And everyone's just like, yep, there's nothing to see here. We're actually going to get into like a bunch of this later. I got to find out where I am, though. I lost it in my notes. Yeah. Oh, so when Clinton mentioned it in this economic policy speech, he was talking about like job training or some bullshit, this shit that he fucking likes to talk about. He said it's important to not overreact to the World Trade Center bombings. That was pretty much his message. And how I mentioned that in December of 1992, they started collecting a bunch of data, a bunch of information about Al-Qaeda. The CIA was collecting all this information. So the Clinton people or whatever said, okay, well, you got to give all this stuff over to the FBI. And this is what I think, and I mentioned this in the last podcast, I think, or the first one. They're all fucking running together. This is what I think is a huge problem. As I mentioned before, is that Bill Clinton had this insane view that this was a legal issue or a law enforcement problem other than an act of war. Bin Laden had stood up. He's holding press conferences. He's sending communiques saying, because it's this Muslim tradition, like you have to declare war. You have to give your enemy time to convert to Islam or whatever. So he has like this tradition and this thing tied in to his religion where he has to like declare war X amount of times or whatever. He's got to give you an opportunity to convert. So this guy's been standing up telling everybody, English speaking newspapers in England or Arab newspapers in England, English speaking newspapers everywhere. You know, it's a failure of our journalism actually this goes back to like a Sidney Blumenthal problem where journalists just flip and they're actually like political operatives. That's what happened to fucking Sidney Blumenthal, and his fucking kid does the same fucking thing. He's a attack dog, but it's a failure of our journalism. Everyone says it's like this fourth pillar or this fourth house of government or whatever. It's all bullshit. We talk about this in the Mockingbird episodes or whatever. Like, it's a huge thing. Like, everybody that didn't know that this guy was out there, was either the president of the United States or John Doe on Main Street somewhere, because it wasn't being talked about, or apparently wasn't being listened to from this president. So he makes it a law enforcement thing other than act of war, even though like towards the end, running up, I think in 2000, they were targeting vessels of war, the USS Cole, like I talked about in the last episode, blown up. But they're like, one of his fucking national security advisors or his secretary of defense, Clinton, this will give you a good insight to this. Clinton's secretary of defense, when the Cole got blasted, 18 fucking Marines died, dozens more fucking injured, probably Marines and sailors, you know what I mean, get it. 18 of them, 18 of them, whatever it is, died. Dozens more get injured. And this fucking Secretary of Defense sitting in the left ear of the president goes, yeah, I don't think an attack on a destroyer, is enough for us to retaliate. Are you fucking kidding me? So I know everyone's like, hindsight is 2020, but as I mentioned in the last episode, I had this similar view in the 90s. When this shit was popping off, like the Khobar Towers and the USS Cole. One thing that Bill did do was he established this bin Laden unit, and he put this guy in charge, this Dr. Michael Scheuer that we talked about before. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and get into some of the actual 9/11 commission reports. Remember, he had this fucking thing packed. Like, he had it stacked up. He had like Jamie Gorelick, who's actually directly part of this fucking problem, as I outlined in the last episode, but we might go over it again here. She was on the fucking commission. He had like all these acolytes and stuff on the commission. They're all there to protect him, and we're going to talk about that when I get done with all this 9/11 commission report stuff. But first, listen to this. What, you want me to do another one? All right, before we get into this, I'll do another one. There's no, plane crash in Shanksville. Like, there's just parts of a plane. It's like it disintegrated. Well, you get these air people, like people that investigate airplane crashes, that say this kind of shit because every crash they've investigated, people are trying to stop the plane from crashing into the planet, at Mach whatever these fucking planes fly at. So, yeah, probably a large portion of the planes disintegrated because, they were getting put, like, when Flight 93 breached the cockpit, they were zooming fast in, probably the same, like, oh, well, you don't see the wing impressions in the Pentagon. Well, I'll tell you what, like, you have the same fucking thing. You have the same fucking problem. Everyone's used to looking at airplane crashes that people are trying to stop from crashing, not that people are zooming towards. All right, so let me get into this. I've probably pissed a lot of you off by now, but let me get into this. I have to find my document. Okay, so we're going to go through a few of these. People say, when people are being nice, they say the missed opportunities. I would like to say the failed opportunities. Okay, so we're going to get to this. Before we go, I just want to do this quick quote. The responsibility of 9/11 falls on the fact that Al-Qaeda was allowed to grow and prosper and the decision was not made to take out their leader when the chances existed to do so. Not once, but 4 times, according to the 9/11 report, President Clinton has acknowledged that as a regret. So that was Marco Rubio, his remarks on NBC's Meet the Press, February 14th of last year, I presume. So we're going to talk a little bit more than 4 of them. I found some data on quite a few of them. May 1998, Tarnack Farms raid plan rejected. So this is when, hold on. Instead of editorializing, I'm just going to read. So there's going to be a lot of reading here for those of you who don't like me to read. I don't know. If you don't like to hear me read a lot, then let me know. If you don't mind me to read, let me know. Because, like I said, I don't know. I don't know what you guys like about the show, because no one fucking talks to me. A compound of about 80 concrete or mud brick buildings surrounded by a 10-foot wall, Tarnack Farms was located in an isolated desert area on the outskirts of Kandahar Airport. CIA officers were able to map the entire site, identifying the houses that belonged to bin Laden's wives, and the one where bin Laden himself was most likely to sleep. Dude, imagine having a house for each one of your wives and one for you. You have to, not to sound like a jerk, you have to stay with them, like sleep with them or whatever. I gotta just give a quick shout out. Hold on real quick. If you guys hear Rob Zombie's Pussy Licker playing, it's because my wife she's a beast when it comes to practicing. And she's a burlesque performer, and this next Saturday at Club Cafe, I think the Late Show, her burlesque troupe, not saying that it's her burlesque troupe, but the burlesque troupe that she's a part of, the Smokin' Betties. You can find their little website there. You check them out. If you're in the Pittsburgh area, you want a fun fucking thing to do on a Saturday, go check them out. She's doing Rob Zombie's Pussy Licker. I built her a cowboy hat. She's got these fucking assless chaps that drive me up a wall. So there you go. So if you happen to hear that, that's what it is. All right. So her little art room is real close to my fucking studio. So here you go. Working with the tribals, they drew up plans for the raid. They ran 2 complete rehearsals in the United States in the fall of 1997. By early 98, planners at the Counter-Terrorist Center were ready to come back to the White House to seek formal approval. One group of tribals would subdue the guards, enter Tarnack Farms stealthily, grab bin Laden and take him to a desert site outside Kandahar and turn him over. This second group of tribals would take him to a desert landing zone. From there, a CIA plane would take him to New York, an Arab capital, or wherever he was to be arraigned. See, arraigned. You're going to see this language all throughout this shit. They are fighting crime. They don't understand that we're in a fucking knife fight in a phone booth. These guys declared war on us, and he's worried about this fucking guy being arraigned. He doesn't want to step on his fucking civil rights. Briefing papers prepared. Back to the book. Briefing papers prepared by the Counter-Terrorist Center acknowledged that hitches might develop, people might be killed, and bin Laden supporters might retaliate, perhaps taking U.S. citizens in Kandahar hostage. But the briefing papers also noted that there was a risk in not acting. Sooner or later, they said, bin Laden will attack the U.S. interests, perhaps using weapons of mass destruction. This was in 1998. Just a quick reminder. The CIA, back to the article, the CIA planners conducted their 3rd complete rehearsal in March. The plan had now been modified so that the tribals would keep bin Laden hiding in place for up to a month. Now, what that means is they found a cave system. So they were going to raid this farm. They were going to figure out which one of these houses he was sleeping in. They're going to yank his dirty ass out of this house. They're going to take him a certain amount of ways away and hide him in a cave for up to a month. And then when the fucking had cooled down, when the shit had calmed down, then they were going to exfil him from Kandahar. So imagine that. Imagine having your fate fucking in the in the hands of a bunch of Kandaharian tribals in a cave. They got to keep you alive long enough for the CIA to come and get you in a fucking cave. On May 18th, CIA's managers reviewed a draft memorandum of notification, MON, a legal document authorizing the capture operation. A 1986 presidential finding had authorized worldwide covert action against terrorism and probably provided adequate authority. But mindful of the old rogue elephant charge, senior CIA managers may have wanted something on paper that would show that they were not acting on their own. Man, this goes right back to this, the strange life and mysterious death, right? Like you just learn that these fucking guys, every once in a while, they just fucking go crazy and do their own shit. Discussion of this memorandum brought to the surface an unease about paramilitary covert action that had become ingrained, at least among some CIA senior managers. Despite misgivings, CIA leadership cleared the draft memorandum and sent it to the National Security Council. From May 20th to the 24th, CIA ran final graded rehearsals of the operation, spreading over 3 time zones, even bringing in personnel from the region. So what they're saying is they brought the tribal elements that were going to be on the ground here. They brought them here to do this last bit of training with them. It's actually very smart if you have the resources to do it. FBI also participated in what grounds the FBI would participate in this action. I'm not sure, because I don't look at this as a law enforcement issue. I look at it as fucking a war. The rehearsals went well. The Counterterrorist Center planned to brief cabinet level principals and their deputies the following week, giving June 23rd as the date for the raid, with bin Laden to be brought out of Afghanistan no later than July 23rd. Remember what I said, it was a month. They were going to hide this guy in a fucking cave for a month. Someone thought that was a great idea. Fucking fools. On May 20th, Director Tennant discussed the high risk of the operation with Sandy Berger and his deputies, warning that people might be killed, including bin Laden. They were wringing their hands. We might actually fucking kill him. These tribal fucking guys might actually kill him. Success was to be defined as the exfiltration of bin Laden out of Afghanistan. A meeting of principals was scheduled for May 29th to decide whether the operation should go ahead. You want to know what happens? You want to bet? Throw down your bets, everybody. But the principals did not meet. Their plan was never presented to the White House for a decision. Working level CIA officers were disappointed. No capture plan before 9/11 ever again attained the same level of detail and preparation for the tribe. The tribals reported readiness to act diminished, and bin Laden's security precautions and defenses became more elaborate and formal. So this is the between the lines that you hear that you should hear here, that you should hear here, is that the White House probably was briefed by Sandy Berger, because he was already involved in this. It never happened, and somehow he got word of this because he started to use elevated security precautions and defenses because they became more elaborate and more formidable. In 1998, why would he just decide that his security needs to become more elaborate and formal? Because he fucking knew they were going to have a bunch of fucking Pashtuan fucking Kandaharian tribals fucking jack him out of his fucking mud hut and hide him in a cave for a month and then ship his ass off to New York to stand trial. August 1998. A campaign continued. Airstrikes is shelved after Al-Qaeda attacks 2 U.S. embassies in Africa. So straight from the 9/11 Commission. Straight from the 9/11 Commission. The day after the embassy bombings, Tenet brought to a principals meeting intelligence that terrorist leaders were expected to gather at a camp near Kawist, Afghanistan, to plan future attacks. According to Sandy Berger, Tenet said that several hundred would attend, including bin Laden. CIA described the area as effectively a military cantonment away from civilian population centers and overwhelmingly populated by jihadists. So here we go. This is some meat. They're saying that this place is away from collateral damage, and anyone who might get hurt is probably a fucking hobbyist jihadist. The principals quickly reached a consensus on attacking the gathering. The strike's purpose was to kill bin Laden and his chief lieutenants. Berger put into place tightly compartmentalized process designed to keep all planning a secret. On August 11th, General Zinni received the orders to prepare detailed plans for a strike against sites in Afghanistan. The Pentagon briefed President Clinton about these plans on August 12th and August 14th. Though the principals hoped that the missiles would hit bin Laden, NSC staff recommended that the strike, whether or not there was a firm evidence that the commanders were at the facilities. Later on August 20th, Navy vessels in the Arabian Sea fired their cruise missiles. Remember this mad bomber thing that I was talking about? Like where we just exploded hundreds of dollars worth of tents with millions of dollars worth of cruise missiles? This is what they're talking about. Most of them hit their intended targets. Neither bin Laden nor any other terrorist leader was killed, and I would include were even there. Berger told us that an after-actions review by Director Tenet concluded that the strikes had killed 20 to 30 people in the camps, but probably missed bin Laden by a few hours. So this is the between-the-lines thing that you got to get. Why would he just pick up and move within a few hours of this missile attack? Why would he pick up and move after a few hours of this missile attack? My bet is that Richard Clarke had called someone and been like, hey, we're going to fucking missile strike you. You better move everyone out of anyone out of importance out of these fucking tents. During the last week of August 1998, officials began considering possible follow-on strikes. President Clinton was inclined to launch further strikes sooner rather than later. On August 27th, under Secretary of Defense for Policy Walter Slocum advised Secretary Cohen that the available targets were not promising. The experience of the previous week, he wrote, has only confirmed the importance of defining a clearly articulated rationale for military action. This guy knows what the fuck's going on. That was effective as well as justified, but Slocum worried that simply striking some of the available targets did not add up to an effective strategy. Eventually, the discussion became mired in bureaucracy and went nowhere. Bureaucratic incompetence again rears its ugly head. August 1998, covert operations limited to capture operation, not kill. To the commission report, President Clinton signed a memorandum of notification authorizing CIA to let its tribal assets use force to capture bin Laden and his associates. CIA officers told the tribals that the plan to capture bin Laden, which had been turned off 3 months earlier, was back on. And memorandum also authorized the CIA to attack bin Laden in other ways. Also, an executive order froze financial holdings that were linked to bin Laden. Number 4, December 1998, missile strike against Kandahar, rejected. Memo to kill bin Laden, misunderstood. This is the thing. This is the one that he talked about to those Australian businessmen, which was the cold read in episode 50, where he's like, I I tried to kill him, but I would have had to blow up half of Kandahar. It killed 300 people. That's not my Bill Clinton accent. I don't know what that was. The December 20th intelligence indicated bin Laden would be spending the night at Hajar Habash House, part of the governor's residence in Kandahar. An urgent teleconference of principals were arranged. The principals considered a cruise missile attack to try to kill bin Laden. One issue they discussed was potential collateral damage. The number of innocent bystanders who would be killed or wounded. General Anthony Zinni predicted a number well over 200 and was concerned about damage to a nearby mosque. The senior intelligence officer of the joint staff apparently made a different calculation, estimating half as much as collateral damage, but not predicting damage to the mosque. Why do we give a fuck about this mosque? By the end of the meeting, these principals decided against recommending it to the president that he order a strike. Later intelligence appeared to show that bin Laden had left his quarters before the strike would have occurred. Do you guys see this fucking pattern that's emerging? Bin Laden left his quarters before the strike would have occurred. Bin Laden left the camp hours before the strike would have occurred. On December 21st, the day after the principals decided not to launch the cruise missile strike against Kandahar, the CIA leaders urged strengthening the language to allow the tribals to be paid whether bin Laden was captured or killed. The new memorandum would allow the killing of bin Laden if CIA and its tribals judged that the capture was not feasible, which is a judgment they already seemed clear that they had reached. The Justice Department lawyer who worked on the draft told us what was envisioned by a group of tribals assaulting the location, leading to a shootout. Bin Laden and the others would be captured if possible, but probably just be killed. Sad trombone sound. The administration's position was that under the law of armed conflict, killing a person who posed imminent threat to the United States would be an act of self-defense and not an assassination. On Christmas Eve, 1998, Sandy Berger sent a final draft to President Clinton with an explanatory memo that the president approved the document. Because the White House considered this operation highly sensitive, only a tiny number of people knew about this memorandum of notification. A message from Tenet to CIA field agents. Hold on, I gotta. Directed them to communicate to the tribals the instructions authorized by the president. The United States preferred that bin Laden and his lieutenants be captured. Imagine what they would have done with this fucker if they would have captured him. You know, what should have happened is he should have got shipped off to Guantanamo Bay and fucking waterboarded until he fucking spilled his operation. But these fucking clowns, they would have fucking had him in a fucking prison. Imagine going to trial. Imagine being able to take this fucking guy to trial. Imagine the lawyers this guy would have fucking got to challenge the system and all this. You watch Law and Order enough, you get a picture of what's going to happen. This guy's going to get out. Then what? He's going to countersue? Or if he didn't get out, what's he going to do? You're going to put him in prison? What's he going to do in prison? This guy's going to fucking be some kind of fucking rock star to these Muslim Brotherhood fucks that are in the system, radicalizing these fucking fools? Imagine that. What would you have done with this guy if you would have fucking captured him? Idiot. I don't even remember where I was. The instructions added that the tribals must avoid killing others unnecessarily and must not kill or abuse bin Laden or his lieutenants if they surrendered. Meanwhile, skip forward a few years when they fucking got this guy. He didn't surrender. He fucking threw his wife in the way so she would fucking get shot first. One of his fucking wives. Let's not even get started on this fucking Sharia law nonsense. Finally, the tribals would not be paid off if this set of requirements was not met. Policymakers in the Clinton administration, including the president and his national security advisor, told us that the president's intent regarding this covert action against bin Laden was clear. He wanted him dead. Does that sound clear in the last paragraph I read? The president's intent regarding covert action against bin Laden was clear. He wanted him dead. This intent was never well communicated or understood within the CIA. Duh. Did you just read the last paragraph I just read? Tenet told the commission that except one specific case, the CIA was authorized to kill bin Laden only in context of a capture operation. CIA senior managers, operators, and lawyers confirmed this understanding. We always talked about how much easier it would have been just to kill him, a former chief of the bin Laden unit said. 5. This is going to go long. I wanted to get wrapped up. I mean, I'm going to cook meatball sliders tonight. That's going to be my project. So I need to fucking get this wrapped up. 9/11 Commission report. This is from the 9/11 Commission report. After the decisions in which fear of collateral damage was an important factor, not to use cruise missiles against Kandahar in December 1998, Shelton and officers in the Pentagon developed plans for using an AC-130 gunship instead of cruise missile strikes. Designed specifically for the Special Forces, this version of the AC-130, known as Spooky, can fly in fast from high altitude, undetected by radar, guided to its zone by extraordinarily complex electronics. It is capable of rapidly firing precision-guided 25, 40, and 105 millimeter projectiles. Because this system could target more precisely than a salvo of cruise missiles, it had a much lower risk of causing collateral damage. After giving White House official Richard Clarke, you know who he is already, a briefing and being encouraged to proceed, Shelton formally directed Zinni and General Peter Shoemaker, who headed the Special Operations Command, to develop plans for an AC-130 mission against bin Laden's headquarters and infrastructure in Afghanistan. Joint Chiefs prepared a decision paper for deployment of the Special Operations aircraft. Though Berger and Clarke continued to indicate interest in this option, the AC-130s were never deployed. Clarke wrote at the time that Zinni opposed their use, and John Mayer, not the John Mayer, a different John Mayer, the Joint Chief of Staff Deputy Director of Operations, agreed that this Zinni's position. Zinni himself does not recall blocking the option because he didn't. It's these fucking ass boys, Richard Clarke and Sandy Berger, over and over and over again. He told us that he understood the Special Operations Command had never thought the intelligence good enough to justify actually moving AC-137s into position. Shoemaker says, on the contrary, that he thought the AC-130 operation was feasible. Number 6, March 1999, a decision not to strike bin Laden's desert camp. What sounds bad about this? I don't know. Let's see. Early in 1999, they're going to party like it's 1999. The CIA received reporting that bin Laden was spending much of his time at one of several camps in the Afghan desert south of Kandahar. At the beginning of February, bin Laden was reportedly located in the vicinity of Sheikh Ali Camp, a desert hunting camp being used by visitors from a Gulf state. Public sources have stated that these visitors were from the United Arab Emirates. Now, this is the famous example. I don't know. I'm just going to get into it here before I get back to the report. It was a hunting camp because these fucking guys would hunt with their falcons. What they're hunting for in the desert of Afghanistan, I have no fucking clue. Like, are these falcons swooping down and eating goats? I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're hunting. Like, I'm hunting a cactus. I don't know what it is. But, so he's there by himself. He's eating breakfast with this fucking, Arab prince. And they're like, no, we're not going to, no, there's too much collateral damage here. It's literally, Michael Scheuer actually talks about this. It's literally this prince, his entourage, and some fucking campers, and Osama bin Laden. And if we fucking pass on it. So I don't know if I should even read all this stuff, since I just kind of told you the story. Reporting from the CIA's assets provided a detailed description of the honey camp, including its size, location, resources, and security, as well as bin Laden's smaller adjacent camp. Because it was not in an urban area, missiles launched to get it would have less risk of causing collateral damage. On February 8th, the military began to ready itself for a possible strike. The next day, National Technical Intelligence confirmed the location and the description of the larger camp. It showed its nearby presence of official aircraft of the United Arab Emirates. But the location of bin Laden's quarters could not be pinned down precisely. The CIA did its best to answer a host of questions about the larger camp and its residents, and about bin Laden's daily schedule and routines to support military contingency plans. According to reporting from the tribals, bin Laden regularly went from his adjacent camp to the larger camp where he visited the Emiratis. The tribals expected him to be at the honey camp for such a visit at least until mid-morning on February 11th. You guys know what happened? We killed him, right? 9/11 would have never happened because they had it fucking easy. It was right there. All they had to do was fucking press this button. They've been dropping these fucking cruise missiles on every fucking tent in Afghanistan, but this one. No strike was launched. By February 12th, bin Laden had apparently moved on. Do you guys see it? One day they're planning an attack. The next day he just up unexpectedly and leaves. And he's like, hey, fuck these guys and their falcons and they're giving me breakfast. Fuck them. I'm just getting out of here. And immediate strike plans became moot, according to CIA and defense officials. Policymakers were concerned about the danger of the strike would kill an Emirati prince or other senior officials who might be with bin Laden or close by. The lead CIA official in the field, Gary Sharon, felt that the intelligence reporting in this case was very reliable. The bin Laden unit chief, Mike, agreed. Sharon believes today that this was a lost opportunity to kill bin Laden before September 11th. Number 7, February 1999, the decision to again amend the covert action authorization, canceling the kill authorization of December and restating the capture language. Wow, someone needs to get that under control. From the 9/11 Commission. February 1999, another draft memorandum of notification went to President Clinton and it asked him to allow the CIA to give exactly the same guidance to the Northern Alliance that had given to the tribals. They could kill bin Laden if a successful capture operation was not feasible. On this occasion, however, President Clinton crossed out the key language and he had approved in December and inserted more ambiguous language. No one we interviewed could shed light on why the president did this. President Clinton told the commission that he had no recollection of why he rewrote the language. I mean, it's right? It's right there, right? Later in 1999, when legal authority was needed for enlisting still other collaborators and for covering a wider set of contingencies, the lawyers returned to the language used in August 98, which authorized force in only a context of a capture operation. Given the closely held character of the document approved in December of 98 and the subsequent return to the earlier language, it is possible to understand how former White House officials and CIA officials might disagree on whether the CIA was ever authorized to kill President bin Laden. Authorized by the president to kill bin Laden. I'd gone so good without mixing up Obama and Osama. Here we go. So this is a bone of contention with the intelligence community and with all these White House guys. Like Richard Clarke, you find interviews of him going, yeah, we totally gave the CIA authorization to kill him. Like, that's the first fucking thing we did. And then we cut to Michael Scheuer, who was in charge of CIA bin Laden operation, and he was like, no, they never didn't. This guy is a fucking asshole, and actually they don't like each other at all. You can find other footage of where they're like, hey, they're asking Richard Clarke, what's your what are your feelings on Michael Scheuer? And he's just like, I would rather not disparage anybody right now. The guy's like, fuck, he's a straight shooter. Anyhow, I think this is the last one. Nope, there's another one. Yep, so there's two more. I know it's getting late, everybody, I know. The decision to not missile strike on Kandahar from the 9/11 report. It was Kandahar that perhaps the last and most likely the best opportunity arose for targeting bin Laden with cruise missiles before September 11th. In May 1999, CIA assets in Afghanistan reported on bin Laden's location in and around Kandahar over the course of 5 days and nights. The reporting was very detailed and came from several different sources. If this intelligence was not actionable, working level officials said at the time and today, it was hard for them to imagine how any intelligence on bin Laden in Afghanistan would have met the standards. Communications were good, and the cruise missiles were ready. This was in our strike zone, a senior military officer said. I lost it. A senior military officer said it was a fat pitch. It was a home run. He expected missiles to fly. When the decision came back that they would stand down, not shoot, the officer said, we all just slumped. He told us he knew of no one at the Pentagon or the CIA who thought this was a bad gamble. Bin Laden should have been a dead man that night. Working level CIA officials agreed. While there was conflicting intelligence report about bin Laden's whereabouts, the experts discounted it at the time. CIA working level officials were told by their managers that the strikes were not ordered because military doubted the intelligence and worried about the collateral damage. Replying to a frustrated colleague in the field, bin Laden unit chief wrote, this is probably Michael Scheuer, bin Laden unit chief wrote, having a chance to get bin Laden 3 times in 36 hours and foregoing the chance each time has made me a bit angry. The DCI finds himself alone at the table with other principals, basically saying, we'll all go along with your decision, Mr. Director, but implicitly saying that the agency will hang alone if the attack does not get bin Laden. The military officer quoted, earlier recalled that the Pentagon had been willing to act. He told us that Clarke informed him and the others that Tenet assisted. The tenant assessed that the chance of intelligence being accurate as 50-50. This officer believed that Tenet's assessment had been the key to the decision. Tenet told us he does not remember any details about this episode. So let me go back and read that. The military officer quoted earlier recalled that the Pentagon had been willing to act. He told us that Clarke, Richard Clarke, informed him and others that Tenet assessed the chance of the intelligence being accurate as 50-50. This officer believed that Tenet's assessment was the key to this decision. Tenet told us, this is the 9/11 Commission. Tenet told us he does not remember any details about this episode except that the intelligence came from a single uncorroborated source and that there was a risk of collateral damage. Berger remembered only that in such cases, the call had been Tenet's. Berger felt sure that Tenet was eager to get bin Laden in his. Imagine that. Berger felt that Tenet was eager to get bin Laden. What kind of questioning did this happen to fucking show up on this report? In my brain, the commission's sitting there questioning C&E Berger, who fucking stuffed a bunch of documents down his pants and fucking accidentally and fucking forgot about it. They're asking him, they're like, hey, what do you think about this Tenet? Do you think he was actually trying to get bin Laden? And Berger was like, I feel quite sure that Tenet was eager to get bin Laden. Boom, there it is in the report. Why do you think he asked him that? Because no one's fucking trying to get him. They're all fucking warning him to get the fuck out of Dodge. In his view, Tenet did his job responsibly. George would call and say, we just don't have it, Berger said. The decision to not strike in May 1999 may now seem hard to understand. In fairness, We note 2 points. First, in December 98, the principal's wariness about ordering a strike appears to have been vindicated. Bin Laden left his room unexpectedly, and if a The decision not to strike in May 1999 may now seem hard to understand. In fairness, we note 2 points. First, in December 1998, the principal's wariness about ordering a strike appears to have been vindicated. Bin Laden left his room unexpectedly, and if an airstrike had been ordered, he would not have been hit. Second, the administration and CIA in particular was in the midst of intense scrutiny and criticism in May 1999 because faulty intelligence had just led the United States into mistakenly bomb the Chinese embassy in Belgrade during NATO war against Serbia. The episode may have made officials more cautious than otherwise might have been the case. All right, so here we go. November, December 2000. The decision to not strike against bin Laden after the Al-Qaeda attack on the USS Cole. This is from the 9/11 Commission. Back in Afghanistan, after the attack on the USS Cole, bin Laden anticipated U.S. military retaliation, and he ordered the evacuation of Al-Qaeda's Kandahar airport compound and fled first to the desert area near Kabul, and then to Kawast in Jabalahad, and eventually back to Kandahar. In Kandahar, he rotated between 5 to 6 residencies, spending one night at each residence. In addition, he sent his senior advisor, Mohammed Atef, to a different part of Kandahar, and his deputy Zawahiri to Kabul, so that all three could not be killed in one attack. In mid-November, as the evidence of Al-Qaeda involvement mounted, Berger and General Sheldon reevaluated military plans to act quickly against bin Laden. General Hugh Sheldon tasked General Tommy Franks, the new commander of CENTCOM, to look again at the options. Sheldon wanted to demonstrate that the military was imaginative and knowledgeable enough to move on an array of options. And so the complexity of the operation, he briefed Berger on the infinitive resolve strike options developed since 1998, which the Joint Staff and CENTCOM had refined during the summer into a list of 13 possibilities or combinations. CENTCOM added a new phased campaign concept for wider-ranging strikes, including attacks against the Taliban. For the first time, these strikes envisioned on-air campaign against Afghanistan of infinite duration. Yeah, that's sustainable. So on November 25th, Berger and Clarke wrote President Clinton, although the FBI and CIA investigations had not reached a formal conclusion, they believed the investigation would soon conclude that the attack had been carried out by a large cell whose senior members belonged to Al-Qaeda. Most of the involved had trained in bin Laden-operated camps in Afghanistan. Berger continued, so far, bin Laden had not been tied personally to the attacks, and nobody had heard him directly order it. But 2 intelligence reports suggested that he was involved. Nearly a month later, on December 21st, CIA made another presentation to a small group of principals and the investigative team's findings. CIA briefing sides said that their preliminary judgment was that the bin Laden Al-Qaeda group supported the attack on the Cole based on strong circumstantial evidence tying key perpetrators to Al-Qaeda. CIA listed the key suspects, including Nashari. In addition, CIA detailed that the timeline of the operation from mid-1999 preparations to a failed attack on the USS The Sullivans on January 3rd, 2000, although the meeting held by the operatives the day before the attack. This President Clinton and Berger told us was not the conclusion they needed in order to go to to go to war or deliver an ultimatum to the Taliban, threatening war. The election and the change of power was not the issue. President Clinton added, there was enough time. If the agency had given him a definitive answer, he said, he would have sought a UN Security Council ultimatum and given the Taliban 1, 2, or 3 days before further action continued against both Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. So this time, what we don't understand, it's not made clear here in this report, is that the Taliban had taken over Afghanistan. They're actually the ruling government in Afghanistan at this time. So it colors this decision-making process a little bit differently, where instead of just hunting down bin Laden, now they have to worry about the Taliban, who's connected to Al-Qaeda in one way or another. He did not think it would be responsible for a president to launch an invasion of another country based on a preliminary judgment. No attack was launched, and one angry official rhetorically asked of defense officials, does Al-Qaeda have to attack the Pentagon to get their attention? So that's enough of this 9/11 report. I think it really shed some light on it, especially if you are kind of paying attention to like what's in between the lines here. Now's a great, I need to decompress for a second. We're going to wrap this up here pretty soon. I know, oh man, this is going long tits. Okay, so we talked a lot about this over the last 3 hours or so. So the last thing that we're going to talk about is in 2006, ABC/Disney produced a 5-hour miniseries that was being made based on the 9/11 Commission report. Now, when they say based on the report, it was partially based on the report, because when the screenwriter got it, he found that the report only went back to 1996 and chose to basically ignore almost everything. I think that this series of episodes, this 9/11 in context kind of thing, is way more in depth in some ways than this 9/11 commission. Without having access to like all the people, I would love to fucking question Richard Clarke. I would love to get Sandy Berger fucking lined up and fucking grill these two fucking clowns. Anyhow, this miniseries wound up being the most controversial miniseries out there, and it tried to answer the one question: how did 9/11 happen? So it's important to note right now that it's like when you do a docudrama or you do something that's so steeped in history, especially if it's not like, ancient history or whatever, there's people that are still around. There's people that are still alive that can sue you. Docudramas have to have what's called an annotated script, which is basically footnotes to like each and every fucking scene or whatever, like line of dialogue. You have to explain where you got it from. And the reason you have to do this is because lawyers get this. They get these entertainment lawyers or whatever, and the lawyers have to clear it because you wind up having to get E&O insurance, which is errors and omissions. It's basically being like any error or an omission, was an oversight, or you have to explain why you didn't address it, and it has to be within a reasonable tolerance, right? Like, we cut this part because, like, we didn't address this because we found that we addressed it in a similar way in a later scene, or, it was like a problem with, pacing or whatever. And they have to do this for each one of these, especially if there's still people around that can fucking sue you, right? Or Disney. ABC's owned by Disney, so you have to understand the amount of money, and this is like fighting a mountain or fighting an asteroid. You know what I mean? So this was going to be the definitive story of 9/11. It was in 2 nights. And the idea, I think, was that, they're going to produce this thing and then they're going to put it out. And it was going to be like every year on the anniversary of 9/11, we're going to show this thing again. It's going to be like the fucking Wonderful Life of Christmas, of 9/11 or whatever. So night 1 was the Clinton era, and night 2 was the Bush era, and they both kind of focused on that administration's failures. So if right now you're like, Bush failures, what are you talking about? Mr. Towers, how come we didn't talk about any of that? Well, because I'm talking about putting the events of 9/11 in context. So Bush didn't really do a whole lot of counterterrorism stuff before 9/11. And, actually there's interviews and stuff of Richard Clarke talking about this, like basically briefing the Bush people into Al Qaeda. And he's like, yeah, they really didn't understand what the fuck they were getting into. And I would say, Mr. Clarke, I'm not sure that you were sure what you were dealing with already. Because it seems like every time you picked up a phone, you were letting someone know that we were coming for him. Anyhow, I got to really work on this. It's like my hang up with this Richard Clarke character. But so that's why I didn't address Bush. Bush basically had one failure to get him. And I believe this might have actually been after 9/11. So it wouldn't have fit into the structure of these episodes. Anyways, this was when they botched this job in Tora Bora to get him. I might talk about that some other point in time. I don't honestly think it's interesting enough. I mean, we're talking about one fuck up of the Bushes, and we talk about 8 or 9 of these. And these aren't even all of them. There's stories. The guy who carried the nuclear football for Clinton, the fucking Secret Service guy who carried around the briefcase with the button and the thumbprint, and you got to turn the 2 keys at one time to launch the nuclear codes or whatever. He wrote a whole book. And in this book, he talks about listening to Clinton on the phone being like, no, I understand you have a sniper and they have a gun pointed at his head, but let's just not answer the call. So it's crazy. So this stuff has been missing from the 9/11 commission anyways. And like I said, he had this fucking thing stacked, and Jamie Gorelick was there making sure everyone wants the Clinton years to be all shiny, happy. You got the shiny people over here, the happy people over there. So, okay. What was I talking about? Oh, Bush failures. Yeah, for sure. Okay. So 2 nights, one night's Clinton stuff, one night's Bush stuff. The left and the Clintons and all these fools went berserk when they started showing these things for the press and for critics and stuff. They went fucking bananas. Harry Reid, who's not in the picture anymore, thanks. I don't know who it's thanks to. I want to say the good people of Nevada, but I think he just stopped running. Anyhow, Harry Reid and like Chuck Schumer and a few other of these stooges, they wrote an official letter to ABC/Disney threatening to pull their broadcasting license, which they couldn't have done in the first place. But the fact that these guys are ballsy enough to put this shit on paper and send it in to Michael Iger was crazy. Like threatening his license to run this thing. And they're all like, no, I didn't watch it. I didn't see it, but I heard it was like really crazy. And like Chuck Schumer, like, as you know, like every time you turn on the TV, he's still this fucking asshole that he's been since the 90s. And actually, I think I mentioned him on the Waco, because he gave all the Clintons this fucking coverage on the Waco thing where he's like, well, really, let's just talk about the word is. That was Bill. I know. I'm just trying to get through this fucking, all I can think about are these fucking meatball sliders. Okay, so they're threatening their broadcast license. Meanwhile, the Bush people were just like, ... whatever. Like, okay, no problem. It's all out there in the 9/11 Commission report anyways. But do another mental experiment with me, would you please? Imagine if 5 senators from the right tried to pull the plug or censor some shit on ABC, on network television. Imagine, just in your brain, imagine what would have it. People would light themselves on fire to protest this. It would be crazy. And so this guy, they started blaming everybody. Then laughably, they get this thing. It's just like when Monica Lewinsky was breaking, and Hillary Clinton went out there and she was like, "We're a victim of this vast right-wing conspiracy." And you're like, "What are you talking about? What right-wing conspiracy?" But this is even funnier because they laughably blame a secret right-wing network hiding inside Hollywood. And it's like, if you just turn the fucking TV on and just watch a movie through a political prism and watch this, like, there is no right-wing network hidden inside any of Hollywood. And the second that something might rear its ugly head, it's just not there, dude. It's just not there. Anyhow, so the amount of fighting against this interview being packaged up and communicated in a way that the human American people might actually be able to look at it, instead of like in some voluminous 9/11 Commission report, having it spelled out and piped into their fucking TVs two nights in a row on one of the network TVs. It was like John Carpenter's The Thing that got shot with a flamethrower. How it freaks out. Like, that's what happened with this thing. I remember watching this back then in 2006. And they were actually, I believe, able to get it censored. There's documentary footage on YouTube. If you're interested in this, I would recommend you go to check it out. Actually, the guy who was just talking about, this Scheuer guy, is in some of it. But it's called Blocking the Path to 9/11, and it is broke up into parts, but it's available for free. If you want to see like the lengths these fucking slimy shit bags go, it's all, freedom of speech. Unless you're talking about the Clintons, then whoa, hold on, we gotta fucking talk about this. So the 9/11 Commission ultimately ruled that no one was responsible for 9/11 until 9/11, totally underplaying or ignoring that if Osama bin Laden was in a body bag, 9/11 wouldn't have happened. And not really the mastermind. He wasn't the fucking guy on the ground. He was the guy piping all the money into it. Like, he was the dude. So you can replace pilots. You can replace dudes like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. If you would have plugged him, that might have caused, some difficulty. But if you would have plugged Osama, and I always say Osama bin Laden, like whenever they changed him to Usama, they changed him in the public eye, they changed him on the news as Usama bin Laden. They did this so it didn't sound so much like Obama. I fucking swear to God, that's why they did it. You should believe me if you're hearing me, but if you don't, then you should believe me anyways. So yeah, okay, so let's wind this fucking thing down. I gave myself a headache, and all I could think about are these meatballs. All right, so I just did like this Herculean task. I did you want to be like, do you remember 9/11? Well, I do. I just fucking talked about it for like almost 4 hours this weekend. I put it out there on Front Street for you guys to check it out. So I hope I didn't piss anybody off too much. Thank you guys so much for listening to the show. I go crazy when I think about the amount of folks that give me the privilege to let me help them through their day or their week or whatever, working your jobs and all that stuff. And like, I understand, dudes, I understand it, whatever. So, it makes me wild when I think about, the amount of people that tune in to listen to me babble on about whatever. Support the show, please, especially this week, man. I fucking earned my shekels this week. Like, literally almost 4 hours of this topic has turned my brain into mush. It's 10:32 on Sunday. I gotta get these shows fucking posted up. I'm not sure exactly how I'm gonna wind up doing it, because I still gotta cook these meatballs. But there's ways to support the show. You could rate and review it on iTunes, which I would love. You could share the show with your other weirdo friends, like I said, or pick up some comic books. That's the best way, because that puts a little bit of, that lines my pockets with a little bit of green, so I can pay for websites and all this other kind of stuff. Also, as I'm doing research or recording these shows, I shuffle my comic book responsibilities off. So instead of drawing, gigantic melting slugs, Slugzilla melting, instead I'm talking to you guys here about, all this downer nonsense and how, I'm actually kind of starting to think that the White House was against us this whole fucking time.
Stigmata Studios presents The Scorpion Strikes. In this comic book, a terrorist called the Scorpion is transported to a secret CIA prison. He quickly turns the tables on the guards and administrators and releases the prisoners. A well-armed anarchist called Constituent Zero assembles a team and fights to take the prison back. This story is a dark political action thriller. The Scorpion's actions set the stage perfectly for the Jin Jihad. Available on Indie Planet. Get more info on The Scorpion Strikes, the Jin Jihad, and other titles at stigmatastudios.com. Stigmata Studios presents The Test of the Scorpion. In this comic book, while the Jin Jihad is raging on one side of the city, the terrorist called the Scorpion sets a secondary attack in motion as he obtains a small tactical nuclear bomb. A mysterious, ever-living warrior called Cyrus the Dead Guy steps forward to test the faith of the Scorpion and his lunatic followers. This is an action-adventure story. It's a bit of swashbuckler that wraps up the Jihad stories. Available on Indie Planet. Get more info on The Scorpion Strikes, the Jin Jihad, The Test of the Scorpion, and other titles at stigmatastudios.com.
So pick up some comics, please, if you're into that kind of stuff. Please remember that Revenge in a Saloon Called Hell is going to be dropping fast. If it's not already available on Indie Planet, it's going to be like any fucking minute. But if you guys want to check out a comic and not buy it, you just want to help me celebrate this, my 2017 project finally rolling out, then you could sign into the newsletter. If you sign into the newsletter this week, which is 9/11 through 9/17, I think, 2017, I'll send you a free digital comic of this thing. So go ahead, sign in. Go to stigmatastudios.com for all other stuff. I got links to all my social media on the website, and I would love to hear from you. So thanks again, guys. And to play us out tonight, I got a new thing going on. It's a band called Melody Horror. You can find, I'm going to put their Bandcamp link on here, and this track is called Inside You. It's from this release. The name of the album is Snake. So check it out. I'm going to decompress a little bit, and then I'm going to go cook my meatballs up. And then I'm going to figure out how to get all fucking 3 hours of these episodes on tonight. So here you go. Thanks, everybody. I love you. I love everybody. Especially you. You know who I'm talking to. I'm talking to you, bro. There it is.